to unmute your microphone before speaking. If you have a question or a comment during the meeting, please indicate that in the meeting's chat function, and we'll make note of that and get to you. A reminder to everyone that a link to the meeting materials that will be presented today was sent to all the members, and they are available on the task force page on the LRC website. And if you're not familiar with that website is legislature.ky.gov. At this time, we'll ask Chris to call the roll.
Senator Givens, Senator Thomas, Senator Wilson,
Here.
Representative Banta,
Here in the room.
Representative Bojanowski,
Here in the room.
Co-Chair Wise,
Present in the room.
Co-Chair Tipton.
Present in the room.
Representative Johnson, please.
Here in the room. Thank you.
Okay, we do have a quorum, and we'll continue. It is good to see all those young faces. They're not all smiling right now. Say a smile for me. I'm going to call on House Minority Whip Angie Hatton to introduce this group of students from her district.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman, and especially for letting us crash your committee meeting this morning. These are a group from my district, Letcher County Central High School, and we have a couple from Jenkins Independent School as well. And they are interns at the Cowan Creek Cowan Action Group, Cowan Community Center, and they've been placed at different businesses throughout Letcher County, from the hospital to Apple Shop, the courthouse, all different places, and they're paid through Gear Up and through Eastern Kentucky Concentrated Employment Program, and they've learned a whole lot. This is their field trip at the end of their summer. They've all worked really hard, and they're having fun, but they got to vote for what committee meeting they would like to attend this summer, and they planned it all around coming to learn about education funding. So I thought that was really admirable that they were interested in that. And thank you again for having us. We'll have to slip out a little bit early for a Capitol tour, but we'll try to be quiet. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Hatton. A couple of other announcements I want to make everyone aware of. We do have a lengthy agenda today. After the first two presentations, we will break for lunch, and then we will come back promptly at 1 p.m. to continue our agenda for the day. Also, there is an overflow room available in room 169 of the annex if there are people who wish to be here in person and need a place to sit. Do any of the other members have any comments or recognitions before we start? If not, you should have a copy of the minutes from our June 14th meeting. If there are no questions, do I hear a motion to approve?
Motion.
Have a motion. Is there a second? Second by Representative Johnson. All those approved say aye. All opposed, no. Motion carries. The responsibility of this task force includes a review of all aspects of the funding model for Kentucky schools. At our June meeting, Kentucky Department of Education presented to the task force about the SEEK funding model, which distributes most of the school funding to the state. Today, we've asked the KDE staff to come back with us to discuss all the aspects of school funding that are not distributed through the SEEK formula, and there are many that are line item in the budget. Our first presentation today, we have Kentucky Department of Education. So would their KDE representatives please come forward, identify yourself for the record, and then proceed with your presentation.
Try again.
There you go.
Okay, there we go. Sometimes that's the hardest part, is just getting started and make sure the technology is working. Thank you so much. My name is Robin Kinney. I'm the Associate Commissioner in the Office of Finance and Operations at the Kentucky Department of Education. Karen, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Karen Worth. I'm the Budget Director for the Department of Education.
Thank you so much for inviting us back here today. Wonderful to see students in the meeting room with us today. You know, at the end of the day, that's why we're all here, is to take care of the kiddos that are behind us. Love having them here, and we will try to make what is sometimes a complicated subject, which is funding for our local school districts, try to make it as simple as possible. Today we are going to talk to you, per the request, about things that are not SEEK funded. We are going to reserve our remarks really to state funding. We're not going to get into federal funds today, but we are going to talk about just state funding. Karen, if you can advance us to the first slide. As a reminder, we have this chart that I think we provided at the last presentation as well. Our funds are broken down into general funds, restricted funds, and federal funds. So we have our dollar amounts from $352 and $192 for fiscal year 21 and 22. Not included in our totals today are the funds for the general fund appropriation for $18.2 million for the school safety facility upgrades. Those were capital funds that were originally appropriated, and so we are not going to address capital funds today. Also not included for fiscal year 22 are capital dollars that were appropriated to the Kentucky School for the Blind, Kentucky School for the Deaf, and the FFA Leadership Training Center, or the $140 million appropriated to fully fund kindergarten, as that was outside the scope of the bills that we have cited on the slide. So those are funds that are available to our local school districts, but they're not going to be included just in these total appropriations on the screen. The Department of Education receives our appropriations. The vast majority of that does go to our local school districts. And just to give you kind of a visual of the three appropriation categories for the Department of Education, we do have SEEK, and we talked about that at our last funding meeting. So this is just a depiction so you can kind of get into your head that we have three appropriation units and some representative items that fall within each of those appropriation levels. So we have SEEK. Then you will hear us talk about BOSS, the Bureau of Support Services. BOSS is our arm of the Department of Education that really is more operational in function. So the Commissioner's Office, my office, the Office of Finance and Operations, David Couch's office, which is the Office of Education Technology, our communications, more of those operational sides of our support for local school districts. And you'll see representative items that are contained within BOSS on the screen. We also have the Learning and Results Services appropriation unit. That is more of our instructional side of the KDE house. So think of the Office of Teaching and Learning, the Office of Career and Technical Education, Special Education, those types of office that really support more the instructional side of our local school districts are on the LARS side. For today's presentation, we were actually asked to focus on how we distribute and calculate dollars that go to our local school districts. So now I'm going to turn it over to Karen, and Karen's going to walk us through, with that request in mind, how we distribute and calculate funding for certain dollars that flow to our local school districts.
Thank you, Robin. As Robin mentioned, we're going to focus on BOSS and LARS today. On the general fund side, the dollars that are appropriated to those two appropriation units to KDE. Some of the methods of distribution that we use at the department when we receive funds in a budget bill are listed here on this slide. We use formula or allocation methods for some grants. We have a competitive process for some. Some are like Representative Tipton mentioned, line items in the budget bill. We refer to those as the LARS lines or even the alphabet. We do have on-behalf funding at the department, dollars that we send out on behalf of local school districts. And then there's a couple of one-offs that are in the budget bill that we'll talk about as well today that don't fit into those other categories. So starting with the formula or allocation method grants, we've listed those there on the screen for you. ESS, Safe Schools, Preschool, those are all part of the Flex Focus funds that I don't know if y'all are familiar with. They are funds that can be flexed within each other. So if you have a greater need for ESS funds, you can move those to other areas of those Flex Focus grants. Those are all based on formula through either statute or regulation. Also, Gifted and Talented is a formula-based grant, as well as KETS. Wanted to talk just a moment about the mental health providers. That was included in our last budget, $7.4 million, and the allocation method is determined by the Kentucky Center for School Safety in partnership with the state school marshal. So that allocation was determined based on number of districts divided into the total grant amount, so every district, regardless of size or number of students, received the same dollar amount. We also have listed National Board Certified. That is actually in the SEEK appropriation, but it's what we call a non-SEEK item. It's $2.75 million, and basically number of certified teachers that are eligible divided by how much money we have is how much we give to districts. The salary supplement is $2,000, and districts then will make up the difference by paying whatever the difference is between what we can give them and what the $2,000 mark is. We also listed Vocational Transportation, again, another non-SEEK item that's in the SEEK appropriation. Number of students, mileage that's done, those are types of factors that go into that calculation. And then in the BOSS appropriation, we have blind deaf travel. That's $492,300, and that's allocated to districts based on students being transported to those facilities. Outside of formula grants, we have what we call competitive grants. We have a process at the department that's unique to KDE. It's called the Request for Application, or RFA. It mirrors the RFP process in a lot of ways. It allows school districts to apply for grant dollars based on certain criteria that's required either through statute or regulation or programmatic decision at the department. So we've listed a few here for you. Math Achievement, Read to Achieve are probably the most well-known RFA grants that we distribute. We do have 95 schools receiving Math Achievement at this time, and about 298 schools are receiving Read to Achieve. And we also have community ed. 93 districts participate in that and receive $20,000 that goes towards salary of a community ed director. Our line items, or LARS lines, or alphabet that we refer to in the LARS appropriation are listed here. And most of these are with our educational partners. We create memorandums of agreement, or MOAs, with each of these entities with specific deliverables and milestones outlined for each of these. We have programmatic staff that monitor. Each of these lines fall within a programmatic area of the department, as well as a budgetary area under my division. And the contracts are monitored annually and quarterly to make sure that the deliverables are being met and the work is being done in a timely manner. One that's a little bit different on this slide that is a LARS line is Frisky. That's $48.9 million that is in KDE's appropriation. What we do with Frisky dollars is the first and third quarter, we do what's called an appropriation modification, and we transfer half of that appropriation to CHFS. And then CHFS does allocate the funds to school districts based on free and reduced lunch numbers. So that's a little bit different. We don't keep any percentage or portion of the Frisky dollars at KDE. It all goes to CHFS. Those one-offs that I talked about that are a little bit different, we've listed a couple here. We do have the Kentucky Facilities Inventory and Classification System that we call KFIX. That's located in the BOSS appropriation. And KFIX is the mechanism that school districts use to enter information about their facilities. It's a ranking type order where districts can rank their facilities by areas of need. We are appropriated $600,000 for KFIX in the budget. And also we budget approximately $12 million for assessment and accountability. It's not a line item, but that's the budget that we typically have. On behalf payments, those are dollars that are in KDE's budget that we then pay on behalf of local school districts. So some examples, in our BOSS appropriation, We receive $1 million for advanced placement in international baccalaureate testing. We pay for AP tests for free and reduced lunch students. And in House Bill 192, we also received an additional $2.6 million for districts to administer AP tests, and we would pay on a first-come, first-served basis. So very excited about that additional funding. We also have in the BOSS appropriation what is called KEN, or the Kentucky Educational Network. That is internet and network connectivity for our school districts, and those dollars are paid directly to AT&T for the services for the districts. In our LARS appropriation, we have health insurance and life insurance, and we pay the Personnel Cabinet, the Department of Employee Insurance, for all school district employees, and it's based on what their plan selection is. So that money goes directly to personnel on behalf of the school districts, and those are for general fund employees in those districts. And then lastly, in the SEEK appropriation, we have TRS, which is Teacher Retirement System. So we are allocated or appropriated pretty large number, $435 million, that we pay on behalf of school districts for employees at their district who participate and pay into TRS. That is the employer match piece.
Excuse me at this time.
Okay, could I just ask a quick clarification?
Yes, Representative Wojnarowski.
Okay, thanks. So you mentioned the TRS is in the SEEK appropriation, but it's an on behalf, so I'm confused.
It is. It's appropriated in the SEEK appropriation, just like it could be in BOSS or LARS, but it's part of that SEEK, non-SEEK item that's in that appropriation. But we pay TRS on behalf of school districts.
Okay, so when the General Assembly sets the SEEK, that money comes out of that?
Yes.
It's in the appropriation as a separate line
Okay.
item.
All right. I'm still a little confused because it sounds like it's not in the SEEK, but it's in the SEEK.
If I could follow up, maybe
Yes.
just make sure everybody's clear on this. Of course, the local school district pays for the employer portion for the pension fund, correct? And then is this the on behalf that basically reimburses them for that cost?
This is paid directly to TRS.
We paid this directly to TRS.
So you pay this directly to TRS on behalf of
Yes.
Right.
the local school
The local
districts.
school district.
And it's for the employer portion
Correct.
of the retirement contribution.
For general fund.
For general
Yes.
fund, yes. And while we're on this, I had a question about the health and life insurance. That's also an on behalf
Right.
that is paid in to the retirement system on behalf of the local district for their portion. Now, I know currently, I believe local districts are responsible for 3% contribution for health insurance. Is this where that line item is at?
No.
I'm just I want us to be clear here so we all understand it. And maybe Chuck can answer
Yeah.
if somebody has an idea.
Happy to jump in. Thanks you, Mr. Chairman. I think we need to distinguish here between current employee health insurance and retiree health insurance. So the health insurance and life insurance in the LARS budget unit pays for current employee health insurance, whereas the amount that's paid on behalf to TRS in the SEEK budget unit, not part of the SEEK formula, but in the SEEK budget unit, goes to pay the state's portion of both pension and retiree medical. The district pays 3% towards retiree medical, and that is paid out of their own budget. That is not contained in the state's budget.
Right.
But the 0.75% that the state does pay toward retiree medical, that is in the TRS SEEK line item.
I
that
knew the
clarifies.
numbers, but sometimes I want to make sure we knew how the money flows. Now, on that health and life, is that just certified or certified and classified?
Certified and classified.
It's certified and classified
Correct.
both. Because I know that the classified portion of the retirement contribution is solely to the local district, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes, we do not receive any appropriation to pay towards CERS.
And then for insurance for those employees at the local district that are federally funded, those dollars come to the Commonwealth from the local school district. So this is just general fund.
Please proceed.
Next, we wanted to show the breakdown of KDE personnel and operating and personnel complement, or personnel cap is what we generally refer to it. About $33.2 million of KDE's general fund dollars is for personnel and operating. That is less than 1% of our total general fund appropriation. And as of April the 30th, our personnel cap or complement was 1,085 permanent full-time employees. And then we've listed a breakdown there at Frankfort-based and then at our state-operated facilities, KSB, KSD, and our local area technology centers. Just a little more on our two state-operated facilities, KSB and KSD, located in Louisville and in Danville. They receive a separate appropriation within the LARS lines, and they do cover their personnel and operating from those dollar amounts. And we were very lucky and grateful to receive some additional funding in House Bill 192 for those two state-operated facilities. Just briefly talk about our LAVEX. We are appropriated $12 million in the Career and Technical Education appropriation for our for our LAVEX. And we also have budgeted about $1.9 million that goes towards paying industry certification costs for our area technology centers. We have some operating for a new ATC that was built this past year in Estill County, and then other operating costs within the area technology center, the area of need that they have. So I'll complete and let Robin finish this up.
So we've done a very, very high overview, and I'd like to direct you to a document that we call our program glossary. General and federal grant information can be found at this web link, and for each of our grant opportunities, you'll find on this document the grant description, the award amount, the statutes and regulations actually governing the program, and that piece about how allocated. So some of our funds, of course, are allocated based upon AADA or free and reduced lunch. They're all different in that capacity. So I carry this document with me all the time as almost like a don't leave home without it, because it can get kind of confusing. But this document can help you to understand how each fund is allocated, whether the payments are quarterly, annually, monthly, how we do that. It's a really good document to use as a reference tool. That concludes our remarks for the presentation itself, but we're happy to answer questions at this time.
Well, thank you so much. I do have a few questions myself, but we have some other representatives. I'm going to start with Representative Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If we can go back to slide 5, this is maybe a little off topic, but I see it, and if I don't ask it now, I'll forget to ask it forever. So, on slide 5, the mental health providers grant program, what exactly is that? What's that about?
So those were funds that were appropriated by the General Assembly, $7.4 million, and it really came out of Senate Bill 1, the discussions around Senate Bill 1. When we talk about safety, a lot this past 16 months, we've been talking about the coronavirus and responding to the coronavirus. But prior to that, there were other safety issues that the General Assembly recognized would be available, and had funding available. So the $7.4 million is to hire mental health professionals at the local level. Each district was appropriated a certain amount of funding to support those mental health professionals. It was to add professionals. It was not to pay for professionals they already had. So really to encourage those mental health services and supports at our local school districts. So that has been underway for a little while and continues now.
Okay. If I may, just real quick. So would these mental professionals be in school or district level, or what's the plan?
So the language was FTE, to be at the school or the school district. Obviously, you wouldn't have enough for every single school. So many times these are hired at the district level and then support the schools throughout the district. But yes, contemplated to be FTEs at the local school district.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome.
Co-Chair Wise was very instrumental, I might add, along with Representative Carney,
Absolutely.
Thank you.
in the passage of Senate Bill 1, so if you'll please elaborate.
Robin, thank you. Excellent comments. And Representative, also on that, at the district level with telehealth and telecounseling, also districts can work with any school psychologist, school social worker that may not have on staff in the building, but look to do some type of contracting as well. Thank you.
And to follow up on that, and this may be outside your area of expertise, I know that there's been discussion of having the ability to bill Medicaid for these services. Do you have any information on what that process is and where the Commonwealth and the local districts are?
Yeah, sure. So that process does come through Karen's office, as a matter of fact, and we work with Medicaid at the Cabinet for Health and Family Services to make sure that those professionals that are identified are qualified and have the appropriate certification so that they can bill Medicaid. So that does come through our office as well.
Do we have any idea of what the total amount that would be covered by Medicaid is?
Well, it's reimbursement based.
Okay.
So I don't think there's a cap on that as long
Sure.
as those expenses are eligible and you have the appropriate certifications for your professionals.
So I guess my point is those dollars are available on top of the amount, the $7.4 million.
Yes, that is correct.
That's been appropriated. And in your original comments, you mentioned there were $18.2 million for school facility, safety facility construction. That follows along with what the goal of Senate Bill 1 was.
Absolutely.
The dollar amount, just for information, was quite a bit larger for all this, but unfortunately, we're just having to provide as the General Assembly funds are available.
And it was a great place to start. We appreciate very much the 18.2 that would go to more of those security measures in our facilities, and then the 7.4 going to really the mental health safety measures.
Okay. Right now, we have a question from Representative Bojanowski.
Thank you. Just a quick clarification. Are the LAVEX the same as CTCs?
So we have both state-operated ATCs, Area Technology Centers. There are 51 of those. Those are actually managed and run by the department. And then the locally operated, or the LAVEX, are those actually run and employees hired by our local school districts. So we actually have two paths that you can go for career and technical education in the Commonwealth. You've got your ATCs, which are state managed. Those are our employees, and you'll see on our employment report, we have over 500 employees that work for our area technology centers. LAVEX are locally operated and run by the school districts.
Okay, so I pulled a list of ATC, technical school, IDs, whatever. So the ones listed as CTCs are the locally operated ones, correct? Just trying to understand. Thank you.
And of course, there's been an entire task force that looked at career and technical education for the Commonwealth, and that's why we didn't go into a lot of conversation about our area technology centers or the LAVEX. There's been a complete funding task force that have looked at that independently.
Our next question comes from Senator Wilson.
Robin, thank you for presentation. It's been excellent today. The question I have is on slide 10 when it talks about the $33.2 million that's for the Frankfurt-based personnel and operating cost. You also show us the KSB and the KSD and the LAVEC. What is the total cost? Is the ATCs included in that 33.2?
Yes, sir. So 533 of our staff work at the 51 area technology centers. So that $33 million does include staffing for those centers. So teachers, principals, for the most part, and usually a secretarial support staff person and a janitorial person.
Well, I was on that task force you talked about, and it's a very complicated trying to pull together a solution on that.
It sure is
something that we found. The ATCs have significantly more funding than the LAVACs. And I think that's something we would like to see more CTC education in our states. That's what our manufacturing firms are calling for. And so that's my interest there. And I thank you for your presentation today.
Thank you.
Next question comes from Representative Banta.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you. This is very informative. I do have a question from your PowerPoint last year in terms of, and I don't know what slide number it is, but it's additional funding. You put $12 million for assessment and accountability, but on the slide from from our information that we got from you, we have more like 21 million. And that was information that you provided to us, and that's not including what the district spent. So I'm kind of curious where the 12 million is coming from.
So the 12 million is general fund, and that is the assessment and accountability staff that work in that office. We budget them straight from that allotment. So if you look at general fund for assessment and accountability, the office, it's about 15 million. Because we budget $3 million for staff, and then we budget about $12 million for our personal service contracts. The addition from the 12 million or the 15 million to 21 would be the federal dollars. We receive $6 million in federal assessment each year. So I think the total is 21. But if we're just talking about general fund dollars spent on those personal service contracts, it's 12 million.
Thank you.
I've got a few questions, Robin.
Sure.
Last month's presentation, you reported to us the total state funds for SEEK, and it was fiscal year 2020 numbers of about 2.33 million. The number you're telling us here today for 21, the general fund was 4.1 million. Is everything? I guess what I'm talking about is the difference all included in your presentation today, the non-SEEK funding. Is there anything else that's not covered here in that 4.1 million?
Yeah, that's what we attempted to do today, was to catch you up on the things that we didn't talk about at the last SEEK presentation. You know, we talked about SEEK base, we talked about equalization, transportation, but there were still some items that we didn't capture in that last presentation on SEEK. So we've attempted to bring those in through this presentation.
That was certainly our intent. I just wanted to make sure we've got everything included. Senator Thomas, you have a question?
No, I was just saying, you were saying 4.1 million.
Billion. I appreciate that. Sometimes it's hard to keep up with all the zeros.
What did Dirksen say? You know, a billion here, a billion there.
I know. That's right. On your funding for the MBCT stipend, I know by statute it says 2,000. If memory serves me correct, have we been appropriating like 1,000? Is that about right? In the local, how much is? Do you know how much is in the appropriation for?
2.75 million is the appropriation.
I meant per stipend.
That's $1,200.
Yeah,
so $1,200. So it's the 800 is falling on the local districts.
And I think the most recent legislation that was passed, I'm looking at Chuck as I say this, but the most recent legislation that was passed indicated that the district did not have to make up that difference. So we fund it as long as it can go, and then. But I will say most districts have continued to do that, and probably will continue to do that. Our National Board Certified teachers are very, very valuable to teaching and learning in our local school districts. So we envision that will probably continue to the local district's ability to do so.
Now, while we're on MBCT, it's my understanding that when a teacher goes into a non-teaching position like an administrator, they are no longer eligible for that stipend. Am I correct?
That's correct. That's correct.
So like if a guidance counselor, assistant principal, once they go in that role, they're no longer eligible for that.
That's correct.
Do you have numbers on are we seeing an increase in the number of National Board Certified teachers? Is that continuing
I
to
think
grow?
that is continuing. I don't have the exact numbers with me, but I'll be glad to get that for you.
Okay, thank you. Like I said, I wrote down a lot of notes. The 84.5 million for preschool, Is that equivalent to the funding we put up to 160% of poverty level? Is that where those dollars go?
Yes.
Because I know there are several. When you talk about preschool, it gets confusing because you've got Head Start federal dollars in there, but the 84.5 is our portion for the 160% of poverty level that local districts operate.
Right. Correct.
Okay. Yeah, Senator Thomas.
Robin, I apologize for being late. What's going on?
Senator, could you turn your microphone on, please?
Robin, I apologize for being late. Just got too much going on in my life. But my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, is that if we were going to do pre-K here in the state, that cost would be $300 million for us to do it statewide. Am I right about that? That's a number that I've heard for like the last couple of years.
Senator Thomas, I would have to go back and look at that, look at current enrollment numbers and see where we are. Right now, we do not operate universal preschool. Our preschool numbers are based upon 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds, disability. So we'd have to go back and look at the total number to see what that number is.
Can you get that number to me, Robin, by what's the date? The August meeting?
Sure. So your question is if we were to offer universal preschool to all 3- and 4-year-olds?
That's exactly what I want to know.
Just a side note to that, a couple years ago, there was a bill filed to do that. And I think where Senator Thomas is getting the number, he may have heard me mention it, is there was a fiscal note attached to that, and it was around an additional $250 million.
Okay.
I don't remember exactly. But where we're getting that numbers from a fiscal note from legislation that was filed a couple years ago.
Okay.
What's that, Chuck? Go ahead.
I'm not sure, given who wrote the fiscal note, I'm not sure you can trust those numbers entirely.
Okay. I got a feeling I might have known who wrote that. This year we had a first-time line item in the budget for the Dolly Parton Imagination Library. For those who are not familiar with that program, it's a program that was started by Dolly Parton to get books into children's lives. And could you elaborate a little bit about how that money is going to be distributed here in the state of Kentucky? The allocation, I believe it was $800,000, if I'm remembering right.
Yes. Our Office of Special Education and Early Learning is handling that contract and working directly with the Dolly Parton Imagination Library to do a contract with them with deliverables to get books out to across the state.
Yeah, early literacy is very important, and the more books that we can get out there. I just wanted to elaborate on that. And just for clarification on the Friskies question I asked you last month, I did get a response from Budget Director Hicks, and it was his recollection that when we did CARA after the Rose decision, it was decided at that time to put that into the education budget, that portion. So it's just been historically done. So now, if I'm thinking correctly, the total for Friskies, I think it's about, each allocation gets about half. So is the Cadmus allocation about the same, the 40, or do you know what the Cadmus allocation is for Friskies?
I believe it's around $43 million.
So it's they're very close.
43.
So we're actually spending around $92 million on Friskies per year. Okay. On the
And then, if I may, Friskies, of course, are so important to our operation of schools. I think there was another appropriation that was recently granted to them of another $15 million from COVID relief funding. So
I do recall that.
It's very, very good that Friskies is getting such great support.
With COVID, with all the issues that are going on with families, it's good to have that support out there for them. And also, the General Assembly did appropriate money to fund additional Frisky programs this year. So we've added to that. My next question may lead into our next conversation, but the FCICS list, facility construction funding list, that basically replaced what we call the old Parsons list.
That's correct.
Okay, so everybody understands there is a process to identify buildings that are in need, and this allocation is just to facilitate developing that list.
Yes, that's correct. So we have an outside vendor partner that helps us with that for the system itself called KFIX, Kentucky Facilities Inventory Classification Report. I think we're about 60% now of schools being on that inventory list, and continue to really encourage our local school districts to do those inventories and get that in the system.
Okay, thank you. Do any other members have any questions or comments on during this portion? Do we have anybody online that has a comment or a question? If not, thank you all for your presentation. Next item on our list is a presentation from the School Facilities Construction Commission, and we have Chelsea and Christy from there. If y'all please come forward, identify yourself for the record. We want to thank our students for being with us today. Appreciate you visiting the Capitol today.
Good morning, you all. My name is Chelsea Couch, and this is Christy Russell. We are with the School Facilities Construction Commission. Thank you for having us today. Our presentation will be much shorter than the one you just heard. We were asked to give a brief overview of what our...
Could you pull your mic just a little closer to you?
Better?
Thank you.
You're welcome. We're just giving a brief overview of what our agency does. School facilities, we serve 171 of Kentucky's school districts. We provide debt service support to all the districts for capital construction projects. Just to give you an idea of the volume that we do, last fiscal year we issued a par amount of $473 million in bonds, 90 of which was the state portion. It was debt service that we support. On average, we support between 25 and 30% of all the par amount of bonds for schools. To be eligible for our offers of assistance, we are appropriated funds from the General Assembly. This last time we were appropriated $58 million to give out to offers of assistance to the school districts. But to be eligible, you have to have a Kentucky Board of Education approved facility plan on file. You've all heard about the nickels. We do ask that you commit at least 5 cents to facilities. And on odd-numbered years, we restrict all available local revenue for capital construction projects. As far as offers of assistance, it's very formulary. In 2019, the Kentucky's total unmet need for school facilities was $6.9 billion. We will see a new report come out this October. But as far as formulary, like I said, you take need minus their local revenue, so all their taxes, and then we're going to take our appropriation and multiply it by the district.
This weekend, not knowing you all were going to be here, but I had some school administrators say, and I wrote it down, when building a new building at a different location, why is it not allowed to include the athletic facilities and extracurricular buildings using school construction funds? It seems that the current system pays more and takes more time on every project because of the current system. Can that first question be asked about the athletic facilities, extracurricular buildings at a new location for schools being built?
So when a new school is built, we do typically allow for state dollars to be applied toward athletic facilities. If they're building a new high school and they're putting in a new football stadium, that's kind of rolled into one bond issue. Now, as far as we do not fund, so if they already have in high school and they want to do a new turf, we're not going to fund that with state dollars. That is I guess, a reg for the Department of Education that we follow, but that is just the general consensus that we don't allow state dollars towards athletic facilities.
How about on extracurriculars, if that were to be a greenhouse or that were to be agro-tech, anything like that that the school is looking to do? Is that a separate fund that would come out of?
I actually don't know the answer to that question, but I can look into that for you.
That would be great. Last question. If a school currently on the list, KFIX, the previous list, if they're third as of today, should they expect to be third when the session starts back up this January?
That's a good question. So the KFIX report is a product of KDE, and like Robin said, there's probably 60% of all school facilities in that report right now. So it's hard to say. For this last round of funding that I was talking about, the federal funds, we used a report back in February of 20 for that. So that looks different than the June of 21 list. But I think that is due to, as more facilities are being added, obviously it's going to shift things around. But that's my only conclusion on that.
And I only ask that simply because this school district, I'm not going to mention them because I may hurt them, I may help them today, I don't know. But because they asked me, I want to at least, I'll get you at the table. They've done everything. They've done nickels, double nickels, triple nickels, you name it. They could do a quarter probably. But they just continue to feel like they are up and down like a ping pong ball. And so they're hoping if they're third right now, my hope also is that that school district stays for those kids that's in that district. Thank you all.
Our next question comes from KDE representative Chuck Truesdale.
Oh, good.
Chelsea, can I go back to the slide 4, I think, where you have the chart with the unmet need? The unmet need is $6.9 billion. Can you talk about what's the total need?
Total.
In terms of, in the first column, you've got 2019 need and then total available revenue. So I guess what's the total need versus what the unmet need
I don't have that
is?
with me, Chuck. That is a spreadsheet that I can provide to you that Katie gave to us. And it's just adding up that first column that you see there, the need. We just base everything off the unmet need.
Right.
I can get that for you, though.
I would appreciate that. I'm just thinking that if you look at that chart, you're looking at these districts. You've got Adair County with 51 million in need and only 2.7 in available revenue. Allen County, I mean, you go down the list, there's a lot of need and very little local revenue available. And I think that's probably a growing issue that the General Assembly and everybody in education is going to have to take a sharp look at in the next few years.
Definitely.
Thanks.
We have a question from Devonna Page.
Thank you. I was wondering about, I'm not sure I understand how the calculation is made as the offer of assistance to each district. And based on the recent state budgets, is the offer of assistance, or is that trending up or trending down, or is it flat?
Okay. I can kind of walk you through with this slide here. So we have the need, and their total available revenue is essentially their tax base. So we're going to take their need, which is on their district facility plan on file at KDE, subtract those local revenues they have coming in. We have an unmet need. So we were appropriated $58 million for the past 2 budget sessions. Before that, we were at $100 million. So we are trending down on that as far as our appropriation that we're allowed to give. But the $58 million times or multiplied by the district percentage gives them essentially their total mortgage again. So that's the total amount we're going to pay over 20 years. And then I take that down and break that into payments for them, and that is essentially their offer. You're welcome.
I do have a question or two, and it follows right along that same slide. And just for the members to look at, I know this is just a sample. It also happens to have one of my counties in my district in there. But it just stands out, and we talked about this last month, that there are certain counties that are losing population. They're losing assessment in their tax base. There are other areas that are gaining assessment. And this slide really shows that. If you look at, I'm just going to Anchorage Independent. that they have more total available revenue than their unmet need, and their unmet need is very low compared to the others. So I would assume that they've done a pretty good job over the years of maintaining their buildings, building new buildings, and then you have these. You've got two Adair County and Augusta. Ashland Independent are both over $45 million in unmet need. Is this a trend that if you look at these numbers across the state, is this a trend that you continue to see happening?
Definitely. They continue to go up. But as far as Anchorage Independent, they have always, I've seen that their philosophy has been they don't issue a lot of debt. So that's why they have a lot of cash on hand.
They pay as they go.
They pay as they go. So I think it's just different, but they're also very small. So the bigger ones, if we included Fayette and Jefferson on there, I mean, their need is quite large, but they also have a huge tax base. So I think the trend is that the need is growing, but that goes back again to construction costs, and what these projects are actually going to bid for now is much higher than it was even last year. So I think as the new report comes out in October, we will see, I anticipate at least 7.4 probably in overall unmet need billion.
Do we have a lot of federal guidelines that we have to follow, or state regulations on what these school districts have to go through? I know it seems to me things like engineering cost and things like that are just growing at a very large pace. I'll say, are the non-construction, what I'll call the non-construction items of a building project, continuing to grow? And are you aware of any efforts to look at those things to see if there are areas that we can adjust and give more flexibility to local districts?
I think just like anything else, everything is rising. So your architect fees, your fiscal agent fees, your bond attorney fees, all of those, I don't think exponentially those are growing, and I don't know of anybody that's actually looked into that, but I could look into that more and kind of give you a more definitive answer on that.
Sure. And like I said, this is I often talk to a superintendent, and they will tell me they need another project, but our bonding we're capped at our bonding capacity. Is this chart reflective of that, or is that some other term, some other situation that's out there?
No, that chart is not reflective of bonding capacity. Bonding capacity is essentially all of their restricted funds minus all their current debt service payments and what they could bond if they had this money. So that's not reflective in that chart.
So that's just another factor they have to take into consideration.
Correct.
What would it cost to do the debt service on a $6.9 billion unmet need? I'm just asking for information. Any ideas, or you can get back to me on that?
I'll get back to you on that. I can definitely do that math.
Does anybody else have any questions? Well, at this time, we're going to break. When we set up this agenda, we had no idea how long this discussions were going to take. And I know the next portion is going to be rather important. We get to talking about weights that we mentioned last month. So at this time, I need a motion to go into recess until 1 p.m. The motion, is there a second?
Second.
If there are no objections, we stand in recess till 1 p.m.
Thank you all.
Sure. This next part. Is all county school people talking about things. And I'm trying to, I looked at, did you look at the PowerPoint? What is this? Southern Regional Education. through it, and I was, because I was going to share it with the Petrie group, but then I was like,